right. Well, hello everyone again, and thank you for joining another video of mine on my channel. Today I'm going to go over the Ingram M10 45 caliber submachine gun. And I'm incredibly thirsty, so I'm going to be drinking some seltzer water throughout the video. So I have a lot of parts laid out here, and I'm going to go over each and every single one of them as kind of like, a MAC-10 starter pack. And I said MAC-10, it's a colloquial term for the M10, and it's commonly accepted, and that's what you'll usually hear when someone's referring to this particular firearm. They'll say it's the M10, but it is technically called the Ingram M10, and it is made by Military Armament Corporation. And this particular model was made in their Powder Springs, Georgia facility back in the early 70s. According to the serial number, it was manufactured in 1973. However, it is possible that it was truly manufactured in 1972 and only became on the books in 1973. But if you want to read more about that, I recommend reading the MAC-10 book, and it gives a whole bunch of information about this firearm and accessories for it, its history, the Gordon Ingram's history and everything like that. So I'm probably going to have to edit this video for time, and that's just something that I try not to do. But regardless, let's go ahead and get started. So the parts that we have laid out here are going to be some magazines. I have 3 different types. I have a magwell adapter here. I have the actual firearm. I have a Lage MAX-10 45 Mark II upper, a Lage stock, a Bowers group suppressor, and some hardware over here that works for these parts. So let's move some stuff out of the way and simply talk about the firearm first, and then we'll go into some more details about the accessories for it. So what I'm hoping to get out of this video is for people with questions about the MAC-10, or want to know a little bit more information that they couldn't find elsewhere about the MAC-10. Hopefully this video answers it for you. Now, there's tons of videos on it because it is one of the cheaper machine guns that you can purchase today in the United States that's transferable to a private citizen. So this is registered to me. Well, technically it's registered to my trust, and I am a private citizen. I don't have any special licenses. I don't have any special government contacts, nothing of the sort. Anyone can own a machine gun so long as your state allows it, as long as the weapon is registered in the NFA, and as long as you follow all federal rules and state regulations and you're not a prohibited person. So luckily I meet all that criteria, and after I believe I waited about 10 months for the Form 4 to come back on this guy. So after that 10-month wait, I picked it up from my dealer, and I was able to take it to the range and do whatever I wanted with it. So let's get started on the basic function of the MAC-10. So we have the grip here. I have a Lage overmold grip here because the stock grip is pretty unergonomic. It's literally just a piece of steel tubing, square tubing, I guess. And this adds a little bit of texture, a little bit of ergonomics to it. The magazine goes in here. So if I orient it properly, goes just like that. The magazine release is right here, and I also installed a Lage thumb magazine release, which also actuates it. It's not perfect, but it gives another way of releasing the magazine. You have the upper receiver, the lower receiver, we have the stock and the barrel, and of course the trigger. So let's talk about the stock real quick. The stock is pretty flimsy, and they are actually known to collapse while shooting. So I'll demonstrate. You pinch this, fold it out, pushing this button right here, pull it until it clicks, and you can see that it's pretty wobbly. And under regular machine gun fire, or full auto fire, you could say, this does have a tendency to collapse, and that is pretty unsafe. It is pretty dangerous, so most people will not be utilizing the stock, but it does look pretty cool, and I do like the way that it folds up, or collapses in and folds over. I think that's pretty neat. Here we have the front hand strap. Now, I assume that they went with a strap because there really wasn't much room to add accessories here, like a vertical foregrip. There are aftermarket ones that you can purchase, like from Practical Solutions, or if you have a Lage upper, that will work as well. But this strap was how it came from the factory. Now, this is not an original strap. This is a reproduction, but it's a damn good reproduction, and it looks very, very close to the original, so I'm very happy with how that is. We have the barrel that's threaded. It's very coarse threading. I actually don't remember the thread pitch, but that could easily be looked up online. And that is for adding a suppressor there. These were typically bundled with suppressors from the manufacturer to their government contracts or military contracts. And it was designed really to work with a suppressor. You weren't really supposed to shoot this without one, because the suppressor was really where you were supposed to hold on to the gun while you're firing it. So if I can line this up and thread it on. So this, like I said, this is a Bowers Group VERS 45 suppressor. You're supposed to hold on to the suppressor while you fire, and this was supposed to be a clandestine weapon, so you weren't supposed to be doing mag dump after mag dump. So by the time you were done using it, it shouldn't have fired really that many rounds, and the suppressor shouldn't be that hot, so you should still be able to hold on to it. But they did, I believe they sold some covers that you could slip over it, make it a little bit more comfortable. Bowers does sell one as well. It's called the Griptastic. It's a silicone cover, but I do not have one of those. Here we have the charging handle, charging knob, whatever you want to call it. You pull this back. You can see that it locks the bolt to the rear, and this is an open bolt machine gun. So when the bolt is locked to the rear, you would enter in a loaded magazine. And once the magazine that is loaded is in there, you're ready to rock and roll. You have your safety right here. So this is safe, this is fire. And as soon as you pull the trigger, the bolt would go forward, strip around, set it off. It has a fixed firing pin in the bolt. And then the next round would cause it to go back. If you're in semi-auto mode, it'll lock back like it just did. If you're in full auto, it'll keep going. Take that out. Let's go ahead and drop the bolt. The bolt can be another form of safety. If you rotate the bolt 90 degrees, it will prevent any sort of charging of the weapon. So it will lock it in the forward closed bolt position. Since it's an open bolt firearm, there cannot be a round in the chamber with the bolt closed, because if the bolt has closed, the round has gone off, because the fixed firing pin has pierced the primer and the round should have gone off. If the round didn't go off, it's probably a bad round. So with the bolt closed with the bolt locked in the closed position, you're pretty much safe. And since it's an open bolt firearm, with the bolt in the closed position, pulling the trigger will literally do nothing. There's no hammer that's going to fall forward and hit a striker or a firing pin of any kind. So there's absolutely no way that the round would, the firearm would go off. So we'll rotate that back. Let me demonstrate holding down the trigger here. And just, if I pull this all the way back, it'll just keep going forward. And that's in full auto mode. You can change that over here with the fire selector switch. You can go over to semi. And once you're in semi, you lock it back, you pull the trigger, you hear an extra click as it re-engages the sear. Pull it back, and there you go. Release the trigger, pull again, extra click, and your bolt's locked to the rear. So that's basic functionality. Let's go ahead and let's bring that bolt home, and let's take it apart a little bit. So you squeeze this down, push this button, pull it back, push it in again, take the stock right out. Then we have the front retaining pin right here. And there's a spring-loaded catch right here. So if you push down on the spring-loaded catch, and where is my Allen key? I'll just push that through. Look at that, go flying. And now you lift up, up, and forward. There we go. So we can go ahead and take a look at this bolt here. Let's move this right there. So to remove the bolt, you go ahead and pull it all the way to the rear, and you can lift the knob right out. Well, maybe rotate it 90 degrees. That's what I usually do. I usually rotate it 90 degrees. This is just, doesn't want to come out today. Come on, there we go. You don't have to rotate it any which way. That's just, I don't know, some habit that I formed. Now the bolt will come all the way out. We have a very thin buffer here, recoil spring, ejector rod, which goes boop, pops out the round. And then I don't know if this will be able to come up. This is a very dirty bolt. I actually have not cleaned it. So there is a fixed firing nub. You can call it a firing pin, but it's really just a protruding nub made out of steel. And as soon as that contacts the back of the round, it's going to pierce the primer. Well, not pierce the primer. It's going to, you know, set off the primer, which will set off the round. The rest of the upper receiver consists of a barrel that is pinned into place. And it's literally just stamped sheet metal squares. This is an extremely simple firearm. There is almost no machine work required at all to get this thing going. So with the bolt here, I can explain how the open bolt will work just a little bit. We have a pretty complex trigger mechanism in here that Gordon Ingram originally did not want. He originally wanted this to be a full auto only firearm. However, for one reason or another, I think, or maybe it was a military contract requirement, it had to be select fire. So right now I have it in full. And when I pull the trigger, notice this sear catch right here. It goes down. When this is down, the gun is free to just cycle back and forth without anything getting in its way. And when you let go, you have that catch that goes back up, and then the bolt hits it with its foot. So the foot that I'm talking about is right here. So this is really hard to actuate manually, but if the bolt's going like this with the trigger down, and eventually that foot right here, if you let go of the trigger and that sear is up, it's going to catch, it's going to stop the bolt. When you move it over to semi-auto and you don't have the bolt in there, it actually does the same thing. But if you have something pushing down on here, it's going to actually cause it to snap back up, which I'm not going to show because then things go crazy. So that's the very simple operating mechanism of the firearm. So let's go ahead and set the original bolt aside. Original cocking knob there. I'm going to take the retainer pin, move it over here. And I'm also going to leave out the stock. What I'm going to do instead is put in the Lage stock. Now there's two ways that you can install this. The first way would be to use the original retaining spring and catch there. And when you install it like this, it's going to be very wobbly, but it's actually perfectly fine to fire off of because, you know, this isn't going to collapse in any way when you're firing it. It's not something that you want to leave permanently because it's just not that secure and it's a little bit flimsy. So what Lage has is some hardware very simple hardware that replaces some of the internal components and allows you to actually screw in this stock and keep it there very secure. So it's an excellent solution. It only takes maybe a minute to install, if that. But for someone who's constantly removing the Lage stock and putting on the original stock for storage purposes, I don't really install it properly because you don't need to. When you're going to the range and you just want to blast off a couple mags for fun, it's perfectly adequate, and it doesn't collapse on you, so I'm happy. So now let's talk about the Lage Mark II. So like I said before, this is the Lage Manufacturing MAX-10 45 Mark II, and it's considered a slow fire upper receiver. And the reason that it is slow fire is because it drops the rate of fire on the MAC-10 from 1,200 rounds per minute, roughly, to roughly 750 rounds per minute. That will vary on ammo, of course, but those are rough estimates. So if we go ahead and take out the bolt, we can do a size comparison of the two bolts. You'll see that Lage has added more mass to the top of the bolt here, and it is a little bit taller as well. It's hard, just ever so slightly, like less than a millimeter taller, but it is slightly taller. But that extra weight on top actually allows it to reciprocate a little bit slower. But the rest of the upper is all aluminum construction, with the exception of the barrel. So with all aluminum here and the slightly better, heavier bolt, you actually get a lighter gun, I believe, and it's more controllable thanks to the attachments here. You can have a vertical foregrip, and you can modernize it. I have a Trijicon MRO up here, got some backup sights here, Picatinny rail, and it's still a very compact weapon. It's not a light weapon, but it is way more manageable and controllable, and it really brings it into the modern age, which is pretty cool. Threaded barrel as well, of course. I have the Bowers can here, which I have this insert, so I can take out this insert here, put in this insert, and this insert will allow me to thread it directly on to the Lage upper. And as you saw me do earlier in the video, the insert that's in here right now threads directly onto the OEM barrel. So let's go ahead and put this back in. And right there. That's backwards. Let's flip it around. There we go. And I am going to install it in. We have a little cutout right here, which goes over the top of the receiver in the rear. So you can see like that, and when I push it in close enough, it's going to click like that. Once it's clicked, you take your retaining pin and you simply shove it through there. Lo and behold, you've got yourself a modernized MAC-10 with the Lage MAX-10 45 Mark II upper. This retains the original 45 ACP caliber. Now they make it a 9mm as well, so you can do a 9mm bolt and barrel. And with the 45 version of the MAC-10, you can actually use this drop-in magazine well adapter, which allows you to put 9mm magazines in here. So this would sit in like this. And with the Lage upper or an original 9mm upper, you can shoot 9mm out of your 45 ACP MAC-10, which is pretty cool. If we add our stock like that, and then we add our magazine, there we go, ready to rock and roll. And the Lage upper will operate exactly as the original one did. Open bolt. With this sear catch out of the way, it's free to go back and forth. And when you flip it over to semi, there you go. So let's go ahead and drop the bolt. And take the magazine, sorry, the stock out. Take the magazine out. And let's talk about the magazines really quick. So before I show you the actual magazines, I wanted to point out that I have a Lage Manufacturing dual magazine catch here. And what I mean by a dual magazine catch, sorry, my furnace just kicked on, so if you hear a little background noise, I apologize. With the Lage dual magazine catch, you can use factory magazines and you can use standard grease gun magazines. So let's go ahead and talk about the magazines really quick. So right here I have myself a Cobra stamped MAC-10 magazine. It is effectively a grease gun mag, and what they have done from the factory is this rear section here, which is where the magazine catch latches onto. They shortened it just a little bit. So with a standard MAC-10 and a standard grease gun magazine, the grease gun magazine isn't cut properly and it won't catch inside the MAC-10. If you were to actually hold the magazine in there, it would fire just fine, but you have to hold the magazine in. As soon as the magazine starts to slip out a little bit, you'll have a malfunction. So they did this cut here so they could force the contracts, whoever is purchasing their contract, to not just buy the firearm, but to buy magazines from them as well, because this way the grease gun magazines, which were plentiful, couldn't be used, so they'd have to go with an actual Cobra branded magazine, which is what this is. And this was probably, this is an original one, I don't believe. Cobra went through a lot of ownership changes throughout the years, you know, from the early 70s to the mid 80s to even beyond the mid 80s, I think, even into the 90s when there were some flats left over. The ownership changed hands several times, so this, even though it's stamped Cobra, it may not actually be original to the original Military Armament Corporation from the 70s with Gordon Ingram. This might be like a Wayne Daniels era magazine. Not that it matters, it's still pretty cool. But what it is it's a grease gun mag that has some sort of black powder coat on it, and it's cut ever so slightly up here for the mag catch. Now I have for you a standard GI grease gun mag, which has been cut for the MAC-10. So you can see here, I don't know how well that's coming up, but that's been cut for the magwell of a standard MAC-10 magwell catch. Magazine catch, excuse me. Since I have the Lage dual catch, mine will catch on either standard GI grease gun mags, or it'll catch on regular Cobra magazines. They'll both work. But if we line these up, best way to demonstrate this, and I can't, it's hard to show on camera, but when you line them up, there's an ever so slight difference between this one and this one. It's very, very small. But what I thought would also be fun is to go ahead and take a look at a standard GI magazine. This one is sealed. It's never been opened. I have quite a few of these. This was made in July of 1969. It's never been opened. It's a standard GI surplus grease gun magazine. So I thought it would be pretty neat to open this one up and see how it looks from all these years on camera. So let's go ahead and do that. Got my razor blade here. One thing to note about these is even though they're sealed, the oil has actually pretty much all but evaporated on most of them due to storage conditions. All right, so it's wrapped in this little oil paper, and we open it up, and Yep, even though this is brand new, it's still got rust on it. I mean, this is just, at this point, 60 years old, 63 years old. Never been opened from the packaging with this oil-soaked paper that went dry a long time ago based on how these were stored. So that's typical. But what I wanted to do was show you. Let's go ahead and take the Lage upper out. So let's go ahead and take the Cobra branded magazine. Locks nice and tight. Pull it out. Take the modified magazine. A little bit loose because it was modified. It's way looser than the Cobra branded one. So that wasn't done to an exact science. It was someone with a Dremel. It wasn't me. And then let's take the standard GI and see how that works. That one's nice and tight because the Lage magazine catch is set for GI specifications. So it's pretty cool. Let's see if I can do a better comparison here. I'll probably take a picture of this, but you can see here, it is, see, it's just hard to actually hold these up, but the GI mag, there we go. The GI mag is ever slightly longer than the Cobra mag. And that little, millimeter right there, that's what forced all the contracts to buy magazines along with the guns. So there we have it. That's my overview of the Ingram M10. I do hope that you guys enjoyed the video, and if you didn't know something about the gun, hopefully you learned something about either how it functions or a little bit of its background. And if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me at any time. I would love to talk to you guys and answer any questions that you may have. So thanks again for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.